When my father slammed the papers down, the sound startled even him. They spread slightly across the kitchen table, thin, official, decisive. "You're a failure," he said, not loudly but with the certainty of someone who had rehearsed it. "You have 12 hours to get out. Your brother owns this house now." My brother Adil stood near the sink. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't celebrating. He just looked braced. I looked at the top page. Transfer of title. Recorded, signed. Dad had already done it. There are moments when something inside you scrambles to defend itself. And there are moments when it goes still. Mine went still. I had been paying the utility bills for 2 years. Quietly. I had negotiated with the bank. When the mortgage slipped behind, after Dad's failed investment, I had picked up freelance contracts at night to keep the place afloat. None of that had ever counted. Adil had a stable job. A visible job. A job Dad understood. I felt the old reflex to explain, to remind him about the bills, the bank calls, the spreadsheets. But something in his face told me this wasn't about numbers. It was about narrative. He had chosen his successful son. I folded the corner of the eviction notice, smoothing it back down. "Okay," I said. Dad blinked, almost disappointed. "That's it?" he asked. "What would you prefer?" I said gently. He didn't answer. Adil shifted. "It's just temporary," he said. "We'll figure things out." But the deed had been transferred. That part wasn't temporary. I packed a single suitcase that night. Clothes. My laptop. A folder of copies I had kept, bank statements, correspondence, payment confirmations. Not because I planned revenge. Because I had learned to document reality when I wasn't believed. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of what had been my room since childhood. I didn't feel angry. I felt released. 3 days later, I signed a short-term lease across town. Small place, clean, mine. On the 4th day Adil called. He never called first. He asked without greeting. "About what?" "The bank." I let silence answer for a moment. He exhaled sharply. "They came by. In person, there it was, the authority my father never anticipated. Not loud, not dramatic, just procedural. The mortgage was 6 months delinquent. Dad had refinanced twice. There were penalties layered under penalties. When he transferred ownership, the liability transferred too. Adil hadn't known. Dad hadn't told him. "You were handling that," Adil said. "I was negotiating," I replied. "They were willing to restructure while I was on the account. And now? I'm not on it anymore." Another silence. "They're talking foreclosure," he said finally. I pictured the house, the worn steps, the cracked tile in the kitchen I'd meant to fix. "What does Dad say?" I asked. "He says it's temporary, that it's just paperwork." I almost smiled. "That's what he said about me," I replied. A week later, Dad showed up at my apartment. He looked smaller without the kitchen table to anchor him. "You knew," he said, standing just inside the doorway. "I knew we were behind," I said. "I was buying time. Why didn't you say something?" "I did," I said, "several times." He looked away. When he'd called me a failure, I don't think he meant financially. I think he meant emotionally. I hadn't become the version of success he could display to his friends. "You let me give him that house," he said quietly. "You signed the transfer," I answered. He ran a hand over his face. The mistake wasn't that he underestimated the debt. It was that he overestimated control. By trying to elevate one son and discard the other, he had removed the only person actively holding the structure together. "I need you to talk to the bank again," he said. There it was. Not an apology, a request. I studied him. For years I had mistaken proximity for belonging. I thought staying proved loyalty. I thought absorbing dismissal would eventually convert into recognition. It hadn't. "If I step back in," I said slowly, "it won't be as the son who lives in the spare room." He looked confused. "It'll be as a consultant," I clarified. "With written terms and shared transparency. No more side decisions." He stared at me as if I'd spoken a different language. "You'd charge your own family. You charged me with being a failure," I said calmly. "This is just clarity." He didn't shout. He didn't slam anything, he just sat down heavily on the edge of my couch. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Not about the bank. About me. The foreclosure process paused once I renegotiated, formally, contractually. A deal signed restructuring documents he hadn't known he'd need to understand. The house didn't feel triumphant when I walked back into it weeks later. It felt fragile. Dad avoided eye contact more often now. Adil asked more questions. No one said I was right. No one said I was wrong. The favoritism didn't evaporate overnight. But it cracked. Dad had wanted to make a statement when he handed the house to my brother. Instead, he handed him consequences. And me. He handed me proof that leaving didn't make me weak. It made my value visible.